Our girl is destitute.
What conspiracy theory do you have?
You're the Feyre.
I'm Feyre. He hates Tamlin. He's also a bit of a petty bitch.
And yet, she decides, let me just shoot my shot and see it. I'm like, girl. Hello, friends.
Hello, friends. Welcome back.
Welcome back. You know, I feel like we should start calling our spoiler friends our Suriel Squad because they know all. Like the Suriel. Our sassy queen.
Yeah, this is kind of the Suriel Squad. You're the all-knowing gossipy bitches.
Yes.
Who just want to keep gossiping about the same shit over and over again.
Who have to speak to your friends who haven't read ACOTAR but are in the middle of it in riddle, basically.
Riddle. Yeah. And that it's really dependent on how you phrase it to that person.
Yes. Wow. This really is
actually really,
Suriel Squad.
Really real. Hey, Suriel Squad. Welcome.
Hey, what's up? Welcome, queens and kings.
And queens, kings, all the in-betweens. Yeah, we love you.
That was great. It's Pride Month. Happy Pride Month, everyone.
Yay.
And just like, we didn't even plan this. It happened by total accident.
Yes.
The Suriel happening on our first episode that we record during Pride Month is just like chef's kiss. So good. Yeah.
So good. Our fearless queer leader.
Yes.
Like, it was so funny in the non-spoiler episode. We were trying so hard to like explain like why the Suriel is like so queer coded without like giving.
I think we did an okay job with it.
No. I think we did pretty good. Well, because also like I didn't want to give away that we do see the Suriel like again, like because that's the thing is you do kind of think you're done with the Suriel.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like quick summary. So chapters 14 through 16. So chapter 14, we've got our baby girl, the Suriel, and then chapter 15, the Naga come, which are terrifying. Tam comes and saves her, which is pretty buck wild. Yeah. And then chapter 16, we have our cute moment with Alice, learn some stuff about her. And then we kind of have this like cute dinner with Tamlin, and we sort of get our first moment of, ooh, they crushin'.
Yeah.
Quick brief summary of the chapters.
Yeah, so I guess we'll just jump into it.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to talk about in chapter 14 is this quote towards the beginning where it says, "The lands were as empty as the manor itself, though I occasionally glimpsed something shining in the corner of my eye. Every time I turned to look, the shimmering transformed into the sunlight, dancing on a nearby stream, or the wind fluttering of leaves of a lone sycamore atop a knoll." What is this?
Dude,
like, what is she seeing?
I honestly feel like it's just kind of like overall like fairy magic.
Okay.
You know, like because I read that as well in the chapter and I was like, is this some like creature that we do meet or that we blah blah blah? And I mean, I think it also could just be the idea of there are things in the forest with her, but they're so quick or tiny or whatever that she never quite like catches them.
Yeah,
because I was like really racking my brain where I was just like, is it like Reese watching her?
That's what I was wondering.
But like he would not be a shimmering thing,
no.
Right? It would be like a shadow of some kind or whatever. Yeah. So part of me, I took this moment as more of just overall magicness.
Okay.
Like not necessarily something like specific. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe in this book we end up but like I really think it was just to kind of give this vibe. You know what I mean?
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe. It's a magical forest.
Well, and I wonder if we don't end up finding it out that it's anything, because I don't remember it being talked about later. Mm-hmm. I wonder if it could be setting up for something, because there was another quote right after this that I wanted to talk about that you brought up in the first episode. So it says, "As I passed a large pond nestled at the foot of a towering hill, I could have sworn I saw 4 shining female heads poking up from the bright water, watching me." I think these are probably water nymphs.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Which brings up, and I can't remember, we might have talked about this in another spoiler episode, but the Gwyn theory.
Well, I think potentially our first one, because we went really off the rails
Yeah.
on our first spoiler episode. So I think we might have then, but yeah.
To refresh people's memories, if you don't know, so there's this theory about Gwen from Silver Flames, and the theory is that her father is Tamlin. And I actually think this is a very strong possibility. So in Silver Flames, I don't remember exactly where Gwen talks, I think she tells Nesta that her mother is a water nymph.
Yeah.
And basically the way that Gwen and her twin sister were conceived was her mom went to the spring court for the Great Rite and partook. And that's how
Yeah.
she got pregnant with Gwen and her sister.
Yeah.
Gwen is established to be, I think, 26 or something,
Mm.
somewhere in her 20s, meaning she was conceived when Amarantha had everyone under the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning the only High Lord it really could have been, because I think she does say it was a High Lord that her mom had. I mean, even if she didn't say it, the Great Rite is between, like, what's considered the Great Rite is with the Lord of the Spring Court, and like other people can have sex too, but that's not the Great Rite. They're just having fun.
Yeah.
So it would be Tamlin then,
Yeah.
unless she was lied to. But I feel
Yeah.
that opens up a whole Pandora's box.
Yeah. Well, because we first saw this theory by like the one girl on TikTok, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like really blew our minds.
Yeah.
I think I really want to see the wording around all of this, or I'll just rewatch
Yeah.
that TikTok because that girl really does she goes back and forth between books. Like it's really awesome
Yeah.
because I'm also really stuck on the whole redhead theory, or like that she's a redhead. And so I'm really stuck
Mm,
on the fact that like, well, Lucian's around.
right. I mean,
But if it
someone
is
could have
truly the
lied.
great right, there's literally no one else it could be besides Tamlin. So unless the
Yeah.
mom's lying or unless something, but like this is like a pretty crazy
It's
theory
so good.
that doesn't like honestly actually isn't that wild
No, not
of
at
a
all.
concept if you follow along on those two things. So like,
I have to go back again and rewatch that TikTok,
yeah.
but I'm pretty sure, because like you said, she was like looking at the
Yeah, she
exact
was really
quotes.
thorough. So
Yeah, I'm 99% sure the quote was like she performed or she participated in the Great
great,
Rite
right.
specifically. Because I remember her breaking it down saying like the Great Rite is only between the High Lord of the Spring Court and
Yeah.
whoever he chooses. Now, again, like, because I got stuck like you on the redhead thing.
Yeah.
It could be, I mean, like,
Blondes can have redheads.
blondes got
Just
redheads,
saying.
or, but if like we're thinking it could be Lucian, like maybe Tamlin decided to tap out one year from
Yeah.
Cal and Mai. He does it in the
Yeah.
next book.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring this up is, and I don't necessarily think like Sarah J. Maas like planned this far ahead with Gwen, because Gwen doesn't come in until Akasif. It might be a little bit retcon, but the water nymphs getting brought up made me go like, oh, are they like watching the spring court because they know like Gwen is from? Like, are those friends of her mom's? Is one of them her mom? Like,
Mm,
are they watching Tamlin to kind of like see what's going on? Like,
right.
so that's why I want to bring it up, is like, does this play into the
Yeah.
theory? And like
Yeah.
I said, we're gonna get to Calamine next week.
Mhm.
So we'll get the exact phrasing, because I think Lucian explains, it's either Lucian or Alice explains to Feyre, like, this is
Yeah.
what
This is what it
Calamine
is.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
So
I liked that moment too, mainly just like when we start talking about the tithe, the tithe,
yeah,
the whatever
tithing.
the hell.
Yeah.
That's almost the first thing I thought of when I thought of when we
Mm.
read about these ladies was just like, oh yeah, there's some subjects like hope
Yeah.
you have the money because he's not gonna be very nice.
Yeah. Ugh, I won't
I
go.
know.
I won't
I
go off
know.
on the
Yeah, let's
tithing.
not.
It
Let's
pisses
not.
me off.
Mhm.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is, okay, so as Feyre is like on her way to find the Suriel, she's like pondering all these things, and she says, quote, did Tamlin or Lucian ever grow tired of day after day of eternal spring, or ever venture into other territories, if only to experience a different season? I wouldn't have minded endless mild spring while looking after my family. Winter brought us dangerously close to death every year. But if I were immortal, I might want a little variation to pass the time. I'd probably want to do more than lurk about a manor house too. Like, just the foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Like, even as a human, she's like, this would be boring as shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's it kind of comes back to what we I think talked about last week of I think Feyre's gut is telling her all of these things, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's about Tamlin or being in the spring court or whatever. And it's that classic thing of like your gut will be screaming at you and you're like, no, it's fine. Like, no, I don't. What do I know? What do I
Yeah.
know? Right. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it is really funny how because I feel like you're doing a really good job kind of pointing them out of like how many there are. There's so many little moments that are
Yeah.
very easy to overlook
Yeah.
that are telling us that like there are so many things characteristically that don't make that make it to where Tamlin and Feyre are not a match. There is such a shift in Tamlin, like,
Yeah.
because he's such I like him so much more in this book
Yeah.
because there's a lot of moments of like true compassion, I think, within him. And I mean, it shows that I think deep down he actually is at his root, I think, a good
Yeah.
male.
Yes.
But I
Yep.
think it's just everything gets so fucked up. But yeah, no, I mean, I think this moment of like eternal spring and how and like lurking about a manor, which is funny because that's basically what he wants her to do forever when we
Yep.
get into Mist and Fury. There's just these little moments of you slowly like, yeah, no, they were never meant
No.
to be together ever. Which like, yeah, okay, we know that because Reese is her mate, but it's
Right.
like even just personality.
They're the
Yeah.
concept of eternal spring, right? Like eternal spring in theory sounds great, but when you think about the reality of it, it's
Yeah.
boring as shit.
It's boring
Like,
as fuck. Exactly.
yeah. Okay, so let's get into our queen, the
Let's get into
cereal.
our queen.
Feyre sets up her little snare, right? Sets up the dead chickens. Waits a while. Of course, the Suriel comes over, gets snatched up, right?
Yeah.
So on page 126, it says, there was a snap, a whoosh, and a hollowed out wicked scream that made my bones and muscles and breath lock up. Another enraged shriek pierced the forest, and my snares groaned as they held and held. I literally wrote in my book, Diva down. Because, like, truly, like, I just love how clever the Suriel is. And, like, and the Suriel knows all, right?
Mhm. Well, it's like I feel like this one I feel like the cereal and what the cereal can actually do, I feel like is like kind of tricky because I don't
Yeah.
feel because the cereal knows the answers to your questions. And I think that's how their
Yeah.
power works.
I mean, there's probably practical reasons, but I'm like, how didn't it know about this trap? You know,
Well,
like,
I don't
right?
feel like they're like a seer.
Right.
Yeah, can like tell the future or any of that stuff. I feel like
It somehow knows the
it
answers.
somehow knows the answers to your questions.
Right.
If they were a seer, they would never be caught ever.
Right.
They would never like it wouldn't work.
Right.
But it does you do bring up an interesting question of just that it's like what are their powers? Like how does that work?
Well, and even more so, how do I phrase this? Like, I'm curious to know how the Surreal experiences time. And
Mm.
specifically because of the whole stay with the High Lord thing of like
Yes.
the Surreal. And we get this in Mist and Fury because, like, from what I remember, I mean, you've read it more than I have, so
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. From what I remember, the Surreal is like surprised that Feyre wasn't referring to Reese when she was talking to him in this scene.
Right. So this is actually I have a lot of questions when it
Yeah.
comes to this. This whole stay with the High Lord thing and how
Yeah.
within our I just got so intense. Did you hear
Yeah.
how I just got like real okay. This whole stay with the High Lord thing. Because it is a huge thing within the fandom, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I almost wonder if one of us look it up from
Mist and Fury.
because it is within the fandom that supposedly the serial when the serial says stay with the High Lord, they're talking about Reese the entire time.
Right.
But
No, I know. It is a little baffling. And here's the thing. my natural instinct would be like, did she just retcon Reese? But like, I know she didn't, because I saw a recent interview with her when she's literally said, like, when she was writing Thorns and Roses and Reese walked onto the page, she knew. She was like, oh, she's not going to end up with Tamlin. She's going to end
Yeah.
up with Reese. So kind of after rereading this chapter, where like the Suriel is like very intense about like, here's what's going on. You know, stay with the High Lord and everything will be fine. I don't think this is a moment where like the Suriel would really like fuck with her or be like tricky with her, you know, just for fun. Like,
Yeah.
the stakes are too high. So like, why the fuck does this queen just not be forthright? And it
What?
could it be the
What just
could it be
happened?
the curse?
I don't know. I don't know. But I also go back to what I said in the spoiler free episode of that. Like, I think it has a lot to do with the wording of her questions. I think it has a
Yeah.
lot to do because she never asks, like, oh, is the High Lord, are you like, because, okay, because the Suriel says, I know a lot about the High Lord of the Spring Court, which is when we know the
Yes.
Suriel is talking about Tamlin. But
Right.
then after that, everything is stay with the High Lord. Oh, does the High Lord not know his human woman is like here?
Right.
Like there's, and even in that
Right.
wordage, you're just kind of like
That could be Reese.
that could be Reese. And
Because Reese doesn't know she's in Prithian.
yeah, but it's so hard because so much of like the conversations about what's going on at the time, like it's so obvious that she's like in the spring court.
Right.
So it's like, Suriel, bitch, why the fuck would Feyre not assume you're talking about Tamlin?
Right. So, okay. He knows she's talking about Tamlin for sure, because
Yeah.
when she asks the Suriel, what do you know about, she literally says, yeah, what do you know about Tamlin? And then the
Yeah.
Suriel says, more specific, human, be more specific, which I'm like, bitch, you be more specific. Like, are you
Seriously.
fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, pot, kettle, you know?
Seriously.
And then he said, that's when he reveals Tamlin's
The
the High
High
Lord of
Lord.
the Spring Court. So then Suriel, you know, talks about like the seven High Lords, blah, blah, blah. And then Feyre asks, and what can be done about this blight that has spread in Prithian, stealing and altering the magic? Where did it come from? And that's when the Suriel says, stay with the High Lord, human.
Yeah.
So,
So like this, it's very tricky here because I would actually
yeah,
then, I feel like the only way that works is if it's what you're saying, where the Suriel has a very different concept of time.
that's what I'm
Because
thinking.
yeah, because and it also goes into the whole idea of that the Suriel is not all seeing, because then the Suriel would
Right.
know.
Yeah, you know, I'm wondering, I'm not going to go into it because it will spoil stuff, but there's some really interesting theories about how do I put it? How time works in the
Yeah,
mass verse.
yeah. No,
And I'm wondering if this is it.
that's that I yep, because I feel like, well, and also even if you don't know any of that shit,
Yeah.
the Suriel's so fucking old, right?
Yeah.
The Suriel says
Yeah.
the, like, you know, there's like older than the bones of this world. Like the Suriel's so fucking old that of course their concept of time has got to be all over the fucking place. And again, it goes into the kind of discussion of like, how does the Suriel's power actually work? Because if it is truly just
Yeah.
kind of like answer, like really focused on verbs on like wordage and like stuff like that, then
Yeah.
there could be a sort of like just kind of call and response kind of thing that happens where the Suriel just sort of, things just kind of come out of their mouths and they don't fully understand it till maybe later themselves, or I don't know.
Okay, you know, I just realized something, and I don't, maybe this is my theory now,
Okay.
my working theory on how
All
it
right.
works. So I promise this is going to relate by the end of
Oh,
this.
I
So
never doubt you.
if you're familiar at all, listeners, with the paranormal world, you've probably heard of the Estes method. So the Estes method is a method used by ghost investigators, sometimes see on shows like Ghost Adventures or like any of those paranormal ghost hunting shows. Basically, what you do is you take an EVP like thing, so an electronic voice phenomenon. So like I'm forgetting the names of them, but like they're these boxes that like pick up on radio waves,
Yeah.
and supposedly ghosts in theory can interact with them and use them to communicate with people,
Yeah.
right? So they'll like if you say like, what's your name, it'll like say like Joe, right? But it'll pick up on like a radio, like literal like radio wave of like
Yeah.
a radio channel to use that. What the Estes method does is it's so fucking creepy. Basically, what the Estes method is you take someone who's ghost hunting, you cut off all their senses. So you put like noise canceling headphones on them. I think you usually blindfold them as well, so they cannot hear whoever else is in the room with them. And through their headphones, they're hearing whatever is on that box, right? Someone else then asks the ghost questions. And then the person with the headphones on, in theory, gets the answers to those questions, but they don't know what question has been asked. So, like, it's kind of like almost like a way of testing to see if it's like
if it's
accurate.
like
So, if you
legit.
ask, like, how old were you when you died? The person can get like 43, right? But they have no idea why they're getting the number 43. I'm wondering if this is how the Suriel works. Of like, it just receives answers, but it has no idea what the
They're
question
kind of
is
just like a
until they're
channel.
asked.
Yeah, they're an open frequency on the radio.
Yes, exactly.
Huh.
Yeah.
That could work, honestly. But I mean, you're right. There is like an indignation with the Suriel later where they're like, they almost are like annoyed that Feyre like I stayed with the high, when like Feyre's kind of like, I stayed with the High Lord, like I almost married or whatever, and they're like, that's not who I was talking about. Like, you're like, what the fuck, bro? Yeah. So I don't know. This finally, I've been so excited to finally get to this chapter, and getting to this chapter just because you are kind of like, oh yeah, like apparently they've been talking about Rhys the whole time. I mean, I think this is also why we all call the Suriel like such like a little like gay little bitch, because it's just like, it feels so like
Yeah.
I have the tea. I'm not going to tell you all of it, but I'm going to give you just a little sprinkle. Stay with the High Lord, giggle. Like, what the fuck, bitch? Like, are you joking? And I mean, honestly, if you really were to take this to like a real place, like what? The Suriel's going to be like, that's not that High Lord. I'm talking about a High Lord who everyone thinks is evil, but he's actually not. Like, what was the Suriel really going to say to her?
Right.
And what's also something that I just thought about right now of like, what if each time the Suriel says stay with the High Lord, like at one point they do mean Tam, just stay there and things will happen. But then when they say stay with the High Lord and live to see everything righted, maybe they mean Rhys. So like maybe the Suriel's just being a like actively confusing bitch and just like going back and forth.
Okay, you're on to something that I've yet to see discussed within the fandom of like, yeah, if you think about it, if Feyre left Tamlin, she never would have gone to Calamai, and she never would have met Rhys. Well,
here's another little bee I want to put in your bonnet. All right, you ready for this one?
Yeah.
If the Suriel had never said stay with the High Lord, would Feyre have ever started being interested in Tamlin?
I don't think so.
I mean, I think the attraction is there.
Yeah.
But I don't know, reading this chapter, and this is the first time I've ever thought about this.
Yeah.
But it's just like, if that stay with the High Lord kind of nugget had not been put there.
Yep.
Would she have even commenced falling in love with him?
I mean,
maybe. I mean, there's
maybe.
Maybe. Because she's already kind of like attracted to him. But here's the thing is like, we'll never know.
Right.
But it's interesting. It's an interesting thought, isn't it?
It really is.
Kind of fucks with some shit.
My gut tells me no. My gut really tells me no, because I think we talked about this in the last episode. You know, as much as we'll say Tamlin is a means to an end for, Feyre is a means to an end for Tamlin.
Yeah.
Tamlin is also kind of a means to an end for Feyre, because like,
absolutely.
And it's because of what the Suriel says.
Yeah. Because also within the book, there is a shift between them after this conversation. Yep. And, I think a lot of it also has to do with like, he kills for her and like all that stuff. But she has this, in the next couple chapters, it's repeated, like stay with the High Lord, stay with the High Lord. Like this creature who's supposed to know all the answers is telling her, like, I don't know, like, I just wonder, like, would she have ever gone down this road? But also, what's wild is all of Prithian needs her to fall in love with Tamlin.
No, and that's the thing. And like, you know, it's funny, we were talking in the spoiler-free episode, the way the Suriel phrases all of this feels very prophetic, even though I
Yeah.
don't think it is literally,
Yeah.
but it feels that way. And I wonder if it is this thing of like Feyre kind of just surrenders to what she thinks is sort of this prophecy in a
Yeah.
way, you know? And
Yeah.
I think that is why. Whereas with Rhys, she falls for Rhys before she knows that's the High Lord the
Yeah.
Suriel was referring to.
Yeah.
And also we know they're mates, so you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also, like, when you haven't experienced love in a particular way, when you haven't
Yes.
experienced joy in a particular way, I think her just feeling at ease
Yep.
with
Yeah.
someone who gives her security, she could very much mistake that for love. You know
I
what I
think
mean?
that's exactly what happens.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the security, yes, but the, like, she feels safe and it's easy and they have fun. I mean, it's much, to me, her love with Tamlin, her falling in love with Tamlin feels a lot like when you're like 15 or 16
Yeah.
and you have that for, or however old you were when you had your first, you know, sort of love that you then later realized was actually a very immature love.
Yep.
It feels like that. It
Yeah.
feels like, and then when you get into the more mature, like deep love, you're like, oh wow, that was
Nothing. Yeah,
I
there was
really
nothing.
did think I was in love with that person at that time, but that
Yeah.
wasn't really love. And so I just, but yeah, I think a lot of it, I feel like a lot of it gets started in this chapter. Like the Suriel is basically telling her, we will be safe with this person. And that's,
It's so funny. It reminds me of a great lyric in Taylor Swift's song Down Bad that I think I actually put in the Wings and Ruin playlist I made for you. For like when she's doing some undercover shit in the spring court. She goes, how dare you think it's romantic leaving me safe and stranded.
yeah.
And it reminds that's kind of I think where Feyre ends up being of like realizing it's that hindsight thing of like realizing, oh, I was safe, but I was also stranded.
Yeah. I was safe, but I was actually in prison.
Yeah. Next thing I want to talk about. Okay, so there's a quote on 126, page 126, where it says she's trapped the Suriel, right? And she's like looking at the Suriel. She says, I hadn't known what to expect as I entered the ring of white trees, tall and straight as pillars, but it was not the tall, thin, veiled figure in dark, tattered robes. It's hunched back facing me. I could count the hard knobs of its spine poking through the thin fabric. Spindly, scabby, gray arms clawed at the snare with yellowed, cracked fingernails. Run, some primal, intrinsically human part of me whispered, begged. Run and never look back. My first note was, first off, was, no, that's your new bestie. Don't run. But then I realized, I'm like, why is this low-key the fantasy version of how you and I met? Became
What the fuck?
Hear me out. This is going to require a little storytelling of how we met. So, Corryn and I met about 13 years ago. I think going on 14 now.
Yeah.
At San Francisco State. We were in a film class together. It was our first production class. Her and I didn't know each other. Like we'd seen each other in class for the first couple weeks, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we were getting to our first filming assignment. And our professor basically had us for homework write up proposals for the film we were going to make. And then he was going to put us in groups so we'd shoot our films. And we'd all have to pitch our own projects to one another and decide which one we were going to shoot. So we get to class. Our professor's going over, the homework assignments, like right before lunch. And he says something to the effect of like, I got your proposals, everyone. They were really good, really cool. But there's some that were like really ambitious. And he turns to me and he goes, Ariel, I think yours is a little too ambitious. And I say something to the effect of like, I know exactly how I'm going to do this. Don't worry. Well, that piqued Corryn's interest. So we're let out for lunch. We all go to the elevator, and Corryn corners me, and like, she literally corners me.
Literally, I corner her in the corner of the elevator, and I'm like, hey, what's your idea?
Yes.
Like, what is your project?
And so I tell her, right? Mm-hmm. Is that not me, the Suriel? Because mind you, it was a horror movie. It was a horror movie about a girl who goes to the doctor's. The doctor drugs her, sews her mouth shut, and then cuts her so she doesn't scream while he's cutting her open so he can harvest her organs for the black market. Just your fun family drama. Is that not me being the Suriel and you trapping me?
And me trapping you with a snare?
And being like, answer my questions.
Answer my questions, bitch. Well, and what's so funny too is like at the time, she's like, it's like Firefly meets Buffy. And I just went sold. And then literally when we went back to class, when class was back in session, I raised my hand and I was like, can we pick our groups? And our teacher was like, I mean, maybe, like, who do you want? And I was like, I want to be in her group. And thus, like, we're not kidding, guys. That is literally how we met and became friends, was that I cornered her. So you're right. I snared you and I asked you a bunch of questions. Yeah. I liked your answers. And I kept
coming back. You kept coming back.
kept coming back for more. Okay, that's really, really funny. This whole idea of like, you're my Suriel.
You're Feyre and I am your Suriel, and I really love that for us, and it is really on brand for us, honestly.
And like, you do have a lot of really random knowledge.
Wait, that's so true.
Like, you're right. You really do. And it is constantly astounding to me whenever you think Ariel has like reached the level of how deep she'll go, then she's like, oh wait, but guess what, there's another trapdoor, here we go. And I'm just like, wow, this keeps going. All right. And me, I always jump right in right after her. Like,
head first.
I've never head first into the darkness. But yes. Oh my god,
okay. I mean, I literally just told you about the Estes method and like what that is. Like,
is that not normal conversations for people? Is that not how normal people talk? Because that's how we talk.
So yeah,
that was not what I expect. That was not on my bingo card for today. And I
revelations.
I kind of can't unsee it now, to be perfectly honest. Wow.
The other thing, I did want to bring up the clicking. On page 127, it says click, click, click with its fingers against one another, one for each word. I need to know where the Suriel got its nails done and what kind of, like, are we doing stilettos? Are we doing coffin shape? Like, what kind of a fucking set do we have?
I knew it. I knew that's where you're going to go with this.
Yep. Also, I think she needs some cuticle cream or oil because Feyre does mention the nails are cracked, so needs a new set, needs some cuticle care. Like, but she's just like that's how you know the Suriel claps.
That's just because honestly, that just like it just adds to the whole thing, the clicking. Well, it adds to the whole like queerness of it all, but also like the reason why I wanted to bring it up in the non-spoiler section is just the Suriel has such a soundscape to them, like the clicking, the sniffling. There's like always sniffling going on, which I like. I don't know what that's about. It is really funny because there is such a thing within our modern day culture about like women or men with nails, like needing the tea and needing to get the stuff. And so like there's the fact that like, and I feel like this was written before that was even really like a queer thing, but I just love that Sarah like gave him like a soundscape, like clicking of nail. And like I know she means it, and she means it in a super sinister way. Like she means it in a very creepy fucking way. But like those of us who have read these books enough, and for some reason we all of us make the Suriel like a queer, like we always Queen. All of us do. So like I've yet to see one where the Suriel is not painted in some kind of queer way.
No one takes the Suriel like serious in the sense of like no one actually thinks the Suriel is creepy.
No,
like no one does.
Well, and I mean, to be fair, a lot of that has to do with the fact of how the Suriel dies and like that.
Which we'll get to that later. But
so rough when we get to that point. I just think it's so cool that like she gives him such a thing, because like the click 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 and it's always 3, and it's like, is it like
OCD queen?
Like
I see.
Is it like how are we picturing it? Is it like a this?
Oh,
like a steeple, or is it like like one hand and you're touching, or is it kind of like a because it says when it's fingers against each other, one for each word.
Yeah, I picture like
one hand and it's like thumb touches like pointer middle.
Yeah. That, I mean, but again, I feel like that's gayer, whereas Steeple is more evil Bond villain,
This is gayer, so
which sometimes there's a crossover.
Choose your own adventure on that one, really.
The soundscape thing made me realize The Suriel would be so good at ASMR videos.
Oh,
Yeah.
their robe, the whispering robe over.
Just like Suriel, Suriel, Suriel. Now I want a Suriel ASMR channel. Like that'd be so fucking fun.
I love the Suriel so much.
I love it so
So good.
much.
One of the things that really honestly like surprised me, I completely forgot how early you learn about Hybern.
I did too.
Completely forgot that
Like
we
this in depth.
learn. Yeah, like exactly. With this depth. Like
Yeah.
I genuinely thought it was like a name that got thrown at us like super willy-nilly.
And only because of Amarantha, really.
Yeah, but I completely forgot that we got this much detail about him.
Yeah.
Like when this whole thing started going of like the king across the sea, there's no humans, angry about signing the treaty, angry has to stay on the island. 100 years ago, sent his commanders. 50 years in, they made a plan, but then he was just like, I did not realize.
Yeah.
I completely forgot that we got that much
Yeah.
information.
It's a big info dump.
It's a huge info dump, and like it's so wild that this is how evil Amarantha is.
Yeah.
That you completely forget about this motherfucker.
I know.
You completely forget about him. Because I honestly think after this in the book, you really go into it's the love story of
Yes.
Tamlin and Feyre after all this. So it's like you get this info, and then I feel like the rest of the book is the love story.
Yeah.
And then it's Tamlin getting rid of her, and then it's Under the Mountain. So it's like I feel like that's why you forget is you get really caught up in all the other stuff. But it's like I remember the first time reading this series when they bring up Hybern later, I was like, wait, who is this person? Because you get so focused on Amarantha. You get so focused on these other things. Yeah, I literally wrote spoil wow right next to my Hybern notes because I was just like, I completely forgot. Like we got this early.
I thought it was just like a very, like you said, brief mention. Also, actually, speaking of that whole info dump, the deceiver, that's Amarantha.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Because that's the whole thing is that's why it's like she almost is like scared of Hybern like lightweight because you know she completely deceived, like she literally went completely off course because she just decided that she wants her own kingdom kind of thing. Like maybe she don't want to serve under Hybern anymore, you know. Like there's a lot of things there, but that's also I think why I think someone even like accuses her for hiding under the mountain because she's like afraid of what Hybern's gonna do to her. Like I actually think there's something that I think something is said later in the books. I could be making that up, but yeah,
it very much is. And it's funny because she was writing this at the same time. It's kind of reminding me of one of the big bads in Throne of Glass.
Yep. Running away from certain kings and wow.
Yeah, very similar reasons. Oh wow. KO and Wilson.
Yeah.
Have you seen that montage of him just going wow?
Wow.
There was one thing I did want to talk about.
Okay.
Which is, I mean, I guess this kind of goes back to like what the Suriel can and can't say. Why can't, like, is the Suriel under the curse too? Like, why can't the Suriel just tell her? You know?
Well, again, it's the wording of the questions.
Yeah.
Right? She literally said, where did the blight come from?
Yeah, so she point blank but it's the blight, not the curse.
Also, the Suriel starts across the Western Sea. There's another fair. So, like, really, what the problem here is the Suriel is a little too much like Ariel and Corryn.
I was about to say, this is, again, proving I am the Suriel.
The Suriel just wants to give full deets.
Yep.
Full backstory.
Unabridged.
Like, really, if the Suriel was better at being concise, we would have probably gotten to Amarantha. Like, we would have gotten there.
We need the log line versus the letterbox review.
Exactly. We need the elevator pitch, please.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely. Because, like, the Suriel was...
Yeah.
Yeah, the Suriel was going there. The queen was getting there. Just got rudely interrupted.
Yeah. This makes all the sense.
Yeah. Just a yapper.
Just a yapper.
The Suriel loves the drama. Suriel wants the build up, you know?
It's why we love her.
It's why we love
Could you? I'm sorry. Can we just take a moment to imagine you, me, and the Suriel having a little hang
Oh my god.
with some hot cocoa from Alice and some chicken fingers?
Oh my god, the
Like,
giggles and the chaos that I feel. Well, I think
yeah.
what's really funny too is I feel like you and I would be like wildly nervous in the beginning. We would just be like,
Oh, I wouldn't be. I would be like, tell me everything.
oh, I would be so nervous. I would just be like, oh my god.
Actually, yeah, no, I would get nervous in the sense that I'd be like, you're my hero. Like,
Yeah, but
you're my
you're
gossip
really
queen
good
hero.
at, I think, like just like powering through that with people, and
Thank you.
and so I feel like I feel like that's why we would have to be together, because
Yeah.
I feel like you would kind of like you would like kind of make me feel like more comfortable, and then I'd be like, okay, so when you said the High Lord, bitch, come on,
You knew what you were doing.
you knew what you were doing.
How much fun was it to watch? Like, I've have you ever seen the reality show Big Brother?
Okay, shut the fuck up. I was literally just about to be like, are we just
No.
imagining that the Suriel is like floating about, just like watching all of this?
I was gonna say, I imagine like in a Big Brother type way, like the world is just the Big Brother house. The
Yeah.
Suriel's watching through the cameras and
Yeah.
going tee hee hee hee.
Oh man. Oh.
Okay. I feel like we
Oh,
talked
yeah.
quite
I
a bit
think
about chapter 14. I think
Yeah,
we covered it well.
we love the Suriel. We'll forever talk about the
Yes.
Suriel.
Chapter 15. So the Naga come in, right? After, yeah, basically they cut off the Suriel from explaining more to Feyre. They surround them. They're fucking creepy.
I have a question.
Yes. You might have the same question as I do.
Mother, I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes. Mhm.
When they say serpentine
Oh.
faces, I know this is not where I think you thought
Yeah.
I was going. What does that mean? Because I will admit, how I picture these fuckers
Yeah.
is that it's almost like
Oh no.
from like shoulder up.
Yeah.
Like I picture that they have like a really long neck, like it's like a snake. Like this is
I
like
think
a
that's
snake portion up here.
Yeah.
But
I think it's snake.
But is it just a snake face, or is there like like literally? I imagine.
Like a giraffe, but snake instead.
Yes, exactly, like a giraffe, but it's like a snake.
That's so much scarier.
Exactly,
Oh my
exactly. So I
God.
imagine them as like huge, kinda.
Oh, fuck that. Fuck
Yeah.
that. I'm going to assume.
Welcome
she
to the
probably
mind
means-
of Corryn. It's awful up here sometimes.
You managed. I mean, you out freaked me. I think.
Yeah.
when
Yeah,
it comes to
it's
that.
scary.
I picture just like the snake face.
Yeah.
But now I really want it to be your version, honestly.
Isn't it scary?
Because
It's like really scary to think of it that way. I'm gonna see
But,
if there's
like-
any Naga renderings.
yeah, like fan art. I was talking to David and I was telling him about what was it? Oh, I think it was about the Naga. And
Mhm.
he was saying that, because Sarah J. Maas uses a lot of different like just folklore and legends and creatures from
Yeah.
like different, and he was saying the Naga are actually like there's some kind of
They're a
like real
thing.
folklore. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he plays Magic the Gathering. He's like, oh yeah, I
Ah,
have like a Naga
that's-
card.
Yeah. No, that's literally what I'm seeing. Yeah, this is actually really fascinating. Well, okay, here's a fun thing. In Hindu mythology,
Ooh.
Nagas are semi-divine serpents, serpent beings symbolizing fertility, cosmic balance, and the duality of creation and destruction.
Oh, the implications.
In Buddhism, Nagas are often represented as door guardians.
Interesting.
This is really wild. Wait, what?
What?
You imagine they have legs, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do they not?
Okay, hold up.
I mean, she could have taken some liberties, right? Like she may have not based them.
But someone in
entirely.
here says, in a court of thorn and roses, Naga are described as being half human, half serpent, scaly creatures with sharp claws.
Yeah.
They have human upper body, but the lower part of their body is serpent-like, coiled like a snake.
So like centaurs, but
Yes, centaurs, but snakes. I don't think that's... The Naga were sprung from a nightmare, covered in dark scales and nothing more. They were a horrendous combination of serpentine features and male humanoid bodies whose powerful arms ended in polished black flesh-shredding talons. Do they ever...
I picture their bodies were human, like
Yeah, I
and then
pictured they
just
had
the
legs.
face. Yeah, which kind of like just feels like an alien
Yeah,
if
totally.
you think about it.
The strong column of its scaly neck stretching out.
You were right. Oh,
Oh my god, it just got so much scarier. I didn't really want to be right, I'll be honest.
Did you say, I think it was in the Hindu mythology, something about like life and death?
Yeah, fertility, cosmic balance, and the duality of creation and destruction.
Okay. You know what it probably is? Ouroboros. Yeah, because for those not
Oh.
familiar with the Ouroboros, I actually don't. I think it's in a few different cultures. I'm not sure exactly which, but the Ouroboros is the image of the snake eating its own tail. And so the fact that it looks serpentine, the life and death thing makes me think of like this is kind of a life and death moment that Feyre is in, like in Thorns and Roses. Of she's like in the process of her old self dying, she's being reborn. I mean, she literally gets reborn at the end of this book
Yeah.
into Fae.
Yeah.
The fertility thing, spring always represents fertility. So there's like a lot of implications, like way more than I would have thought with the Naga. I'm so glad you looked this up. Like,
Yeah, me
holy shit.
too,
My
actually.
mind is being blown.
Well,
Like,
mainly
fuck.
just because I feel like she's so fascinating with all this
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, this is really weird. Oh, nope, nope, nope. I'm
Wait, now
also
I
really
gotta
afraid
see.
of snakes, guys. So
Here's what's really hard. I have a lot of respect for snakes. I really do. It's
Yeah.
just that I grew up in a place where poisonous
Oh,
snakes, first 10 years of my life from Florida, y'all. So
yeah.
so we had poisonous snakes about, and it was not great. And we lived off a lagoon too. So we would open our like filter for our pool, and there would be like a
Yeah.
moccasin in there, and then our next door neighbors had pythons, and they would chase me with pythons.
Jesus Christ.
Florida.
I love snakes. Like I'm totally chill with them, but I like those are like when people have a fear of snakes, like I get it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it makes sense to me.
So I almost feel like this is what you were imagining.
Yeah. Yep. That's
Yeah.
exactly
So
what
guys, I showed her a photo of like basically like a super reptilian man
Yeah.
looking thing. But then there's a lot of art from Akatar that shows basically what we were saying was like a centaur, but it's like a snake bottom half. See, there's a lot of this.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. I hate that.
Again, guys, I showed her the sort of like centaur style snake thing where the bottom half is legs and the top half is like a male torso.
I do have
Okay,
another
sorry, I have to
question
stop.
though.
Yeah.
It's okay. So when the Naga first starts
Yes.
speaking,
Yes.
one of them says, "The Dark Mother has sent us a gift today, brothers." Who is the Dark Mother?
Dude, I don't know. Like at first I was like, is that Amarantha?
That's what I thought.
And then I was like, well, I don't that would mean
She
that they
is sending
view
creatures out there, so it could be. But I don't know. I think because like, and maybe it's just because like there's the mother, like the Dark Mother sounds much bigger than Amarantha. So like,
exactly. That's how I feel.
yeah,
I'm like, it feels almost more like having a demon in some ghost story say like Lucifer or Lilith sent us whatever. Like
right,
that's almost what it feels like to me. Because I
yeah,
started thinking about it more. I'm like, Dark Mother sounds too powerful for it to be Amarantha.
yeah. I mean, this brings up like this might be a mass verse thing versus like
Mm.
just this book. And maybe we will get answers later. Maybe she planned to do something with it and just decided not to. Like, but that was something I was like, who's the Dark Mother?
Yeah. Yeah, same. I was pretty lost too because I was like, okay, yeah, Amarantha. And the more I thought about it, I was like, feels it feels
Big.
too, but now I'm pretty curious because like the adder does refer to Amarantha. He has some like name for her.
Yeah, so maybe it is Amarantha.
I mean, it could just be Queen. Like I don't know. It could just be Queen when he talks to her. Like I don't
Well,
know.
and it brings up another question of like because they mention he says like the Dark Mother has sent us a gift today, brother, and the gift is referring to the
The
cereal,
cereal
whereas they look at Feyre as a snack.
snack, just a little snack.
Saying not in the complimentary way.
Not in that way.
It makes you wonder whoever this Dark Mother is, whether it's Amarantha or someone else, why like why are they viewing the cereal as a gift? And I would think it's because the cereal can answer whatever.
Oh gosh, could
And
you imagine?
well, and then what questions does this Dark Mother have for the cereal, right? Which
Yeah,
I think that is kind of part of the reason it makes me inclined to believe that like they are
it's
referencing
Amarantha.
Amarantha.
Yeah.
But also like she's not
I don't
really.
really feel like she'd waste her time on that right now.
Yeah, and she's not like what questions would she have? Like the only thing she's really dealing with is trying to make sure Tamlin doesn't break the curse.
Well, but I also realized that it's the Dark Mother has sent us a gift. I'm realizing now, don't they mean gift as in they want to capture
Right.
the Suriel to bring it
Mhm.
back to Amarantha?
Right, so, like, she didn't
Right?
send them
So
out.
exactly.
Oh, so
Yeah.
that would you mean, like,
So the
then
Dark
it
Mother
would be a
would be
different
something else.
'cause, yeah, Amarantha didn't just put
Send
this
out a Suriel for
yeah.
them just to go pick up. Right, because that's how I always
Oh.
read this moment was that it was a gift.
Like, were they going to keep it for themselves? Or I always, in my mind, although it's funny, that's a reread headspace. My reread headspace is
Yeah.
that the gift is for Amarantha, that they would take the Suriel to Amarantha. Or do
Right.
the Naga just want the Suriel for themselves?
Yeah, that's a good point. But now that we're talking about this, I'm now starting to be inclined that, like, to think that Amaranth and the Dark Mother are separate
Yeah,
beings.
same. That brings up one thing of that. Well, first of all, the Suriel in the last chapter wants Feyre to save herself, which is
Yeah.
incredible. It goes against a lot of these ideas that we have about the Suriel. And then also in 15, Feyre saves the Suriel, which is, what the Suriel asked for. But like, I highly doubt the Suriel was actually expecting her to do it, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
But I just love it because it's this consistent theme, I think, with Sarah J. Maas and her female main characters of like, they're always for the underdog. Always. And they're never for useless death.
Yep.
Like, death always has to have a purpose, whether it's for food or, personal like self-preservation, right? Like
Right.
protecting themselves against someone or whatever. And that's why when like she does have a character who maybe is a part of some more death than we're used to, she's a hard character to pin down because you're not quite sure what you feel about her. And so that's why if there ever are any good things about her, you're kind of surprised. And that's in a whole other series that I won't dig into. But I think I just love how it's always for the underdog. And Feyre is always for the underdog. That's like the overall theme we've seen with her so far. So like I love that she saves the Suriel.
Yeah.
And honestly, in a way that potentially like hurts herself.
She almost dies.
Yeah, she almost dies. But the other thing I think is really interesting is that like Ariel and I, we've had this discussion of what are the pronouns of the Suriel, because there is a moment where the pronouns on page 129 says he.
Yeah.
My thing about this that I think is very interesting is that Ariel had to like comb through to find this because all the other times that the cereal, why do I keep saying cereal? Cereal. Would you like some honey nut oats?
I feel like you want to say Cyril, like Cyril Figgis.
Cyril Figgis. The Suriel. Every other time the Suriel talks, Sarah J. Maas has the Suriel or it.
Yeah.
And there's one moment on 129. Because Ariel even texted me about this of like, I found the pronoun, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like they're non-binary because there's literally there's no pronoun. It's either it or the Suriel.
Yeah.
And there is a moment where it says he said when I raised a brow. And I have to say, I'm going to be a little chaotic bitch, and I think it's a typo. I don't think the Suriel has. It's a pretty hard stance. I mean, it's a pretty intense stance to have. But
look, I stand it.
Well, because there's something so interesting to me that there's been such care taken to put the Suriel and it, and then there's just one moment where she says he.
I mean, it could be a double pronoun situation.
Oh my gosh, look at me. Just completely forgetting about our double pronoun friends.
Yeah.
That's so true. It could be a he, they.
I like the Suriel does feel very non-binary to me in that like well, especially because like we were talking about earlier, like its voice, it has like multiple voices basically.
Yeah.
So like I will say, and this is more of a like, this is no diss to Mother Maas, like I don't think she planned on like making the Suriel queer, to be honest.
I don't
really
think she
don't
did either. That's a good point.
I would love if she did. Like that'd be so rad. I think we all made the Suriel queer.
I think we all made the Suriel queer. But that doesn't mean though that she didn't intend to not really give it a gender.
Yeah.
And this he could just be, yeah, I don't know. I kind of like the idea of the he being a typo.
I mean, we're going to find out in later books.
Yes. Ooh, you're so right. Oh, I'm so excited. We can unpack that when we get there.
This is all to say, never assume pronouns.
Yeah. Never assume. Never assume.
Yeah.
Okay. So after this whole Naga attack, Tamlin comes in. Right. And then in the last chapter, we learned that, Tamlin is the High Lord, which is like wild for her.
Whoa.
Wow. He's the High Lord. She's very scared of him, but like he comes and saves her. And it's very cool. It's like a good moment in the first read. What kind of struck me was she has this moment at the end of the chapter where she is sensing his shame. And and she's taking it as his shame of, kind of having to be this beast to protect her, having to go to this sort of rage place to kill, that's how she's viewing it. And while I do think that is true, I have a question of like, could it also be the shame of like him feeling guilty that she's even here, that she has to deal with all of this, and guilty
she would go
that
to the lengths of like finding the Suriel.
Yeah. Or that she's even in this situation where Naga could attack her.
Yeah.
Guilty that he can't say anything.
Yeah.
That and like I wonder if there's almost this little part of him that like kind of hopes the Suriel. I mean at this point in the chapter, he doesn't know. Like at this point in the book, he doesn't know that she went to get the Suriel. He thinks she's just been out in the forest. So
that's true. Yeah.
So it's like, I'm just wondering some of the shame. Is it just this like he is kind of starting to develop like some feelings for her, and is it the shame of like, oh fuck, like I put her in a really dangerous position. I'm just wondering,
like push her away maybe.
Yeah.
And
but also the fact that like she has to kill this thing to survive. She has to do, and I think by this point he's kind of noticed that she's a much more tender person than I think he expected. And so I don't know. This shame that he experiences at the end of the chapter, I was just kind of curious. Like, I wonder if there's like a bit more under there than.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And like, I just realized he's never seen her hunt until now. Like, and he knows she killed one of them. And I feel like knowing it versus seeing it, it's probably really different. Yeah. And especially knowing like she is now hunted down to Faye.
Yeah.
Andress and the Naga.
Yeah.
Like as a human. Like that's insane.
That's
right?
insane.
Like no other human would survive that, right?
No.
Maybe Jurian, but Jurian's.
Jurian.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Good.
I feel like we should get to chapter 16.
Yes.
So it gets mentioned that Alice's brother-in-law and sister were murdered 50 years ago.
Yeah.
That had to have been
100% Amarantha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's no way. And yeah, we learned she's from the summer court, right?
I think so. I'm pretty sure.
I know the boys were in the summer court.
That's where the boys are.
Yeah. I feel like there's some stuff that comes up with Tarquin and like the whole Amarantha stuff. Like I feel like the summer court maybe I'm making this up, but like I feel like the summer court got hit pretty hard by like when Amarantha strolled on in.
Well, because remember Tarquin only takes over because his dad or whomever is killed under the mountain.
Oh, it's under the mountain. But yeah, I think that's kind of what I mean is like I feel the summer court got hit
pretty hard
compared to some of the other courts.
Yeah. Well, okay, we know for sure the nephews are in summer court.
Yeah.
Because when the attack happens on summer court, that's like a thing that they talk about with Alice. So
yeah. And then we never see them again, which is like kind of fucked.
Yeah, we never see Alice again ever.
No, I think we find out she's safe.
Yes, I'm pretty sure we find out she's safe somewhere with the nephews.
Yeah,
and like mainly because we also find out that like Tamlin is basically entirely by himself. Like there's no one at this like at least at like the manor anymore. Like the spring court has pretty much like fallen into like complete like disarray.
Yeah,
kind of feel bad for the spring court people. It's not their fault.
Oh, everyone else, yeah. But this is why we need a redemption story, because if we get a redemption story, Alice, I think she'll come back.
The more I think about it, the more I talk about it with other people, I want it really badly.
Same.
Because like rereading this stuff with Tamlin, it just like really hurts the heart. Like you're just
It
like, oh,
does.
dude.
It
But okay,
does.
the very beginning of this, before we even get to the Alice stuff, like I have this question
Yeah.
because, Feyre asks like, why are these creatures coming over the border? Why are they sort of like, like allowed to roam? And like,
Right.
where are the other lords? Like all of this stuff. And like, it's so wild rereading it, right? Because you're like, well, all the other lords are under the mountain. That's why these creatures can roam. But also like when we hear Lucian be like, it's time to like make a stand and all of that. Is it because we're supposed to think that Amarantha's like we find out, right, that Amarantha's been like sending all these creatures like to the spring
Yeah.
court, right? Like she
Yeah.
sends the bog, right?
Yes, I
And she
think so.
sends yeah, so like that's what they mean when he says like we need to take a stand, right?
I would
Because
assume.
it's
Yeah.
actually Amarantha just like fucking with them, just sending shit, right?
Right, and
Or
it's
is it
probably
just like creatures roaming? Like I don't
No, I think well, it could be a combo. I
pretty sure
think it
the
is
bog
her
we know for
sending.
sure is her.
Well, and it makes sense because like she's trying to get him
Yeah.
to like cave because like she's like only a few months shy of the curse ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
They're very
like,
close.
and I mean, I think we find out she has spies out
Yeah.
there, right? I mean, we know she sends Reese to Calanmai,
Right.
although he's not actually there to spy. So she possibly knows by this point that he's found a human woman and brought her back to the spring
Mhm.
court. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering if that's why she's sending. I mean, I would assume the puka was sent by her. Maybe not the Naga, only because like that was like Feyre went into the woods, so like they're probably just there. But
Mm.
like the puka and the bog, I could see Amarantha sending.
Sending.
And it's probably because she knows Feyre's there and
Yeah.
is like, fuck, he is the closest he's ever been, as far as we know, to breaking the curse. Gotta nip that in the bud,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. But I also thought that Amarantha doesn't find out about Feyre until Calamai. I mean, I feel
Oh.
like I still think that Amarantha could have sent the bog just to fuck with Tamlin.
Yeah. That's true.
She's kind of a cunt.
You don't say. One thing I wanted to bring up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So when Feyre is talking to Alice and Alice says, don't listen to Lucian next time, come to me, blah, blah, blah.
I love
She
Alice.
says, in regards to trying to trap the Suriel, she says, all you need to do is offer it a new robe and it would have groveled at your feet.
Oh God, what a queen.
That hurt so much.
Yeah, I know.
Knowing, like, first time I'm rereading it, knowing that's what kills the Suriel is he takes a cloak from Ianthe.
I know. When I first read that with Alice too, I was just like, the cloak.
Yeah, the cloak.
So important.
Cloak.
Sweet baby girl just wants some new clothes.
I know. Again, very queer coded.
Very queer coded.
Another thing I want to talk about. So this is like at the dinner. Tamlin says, you actually snared the Suriel, a human girl, right? Which this was in the last episode for something I wanted to bring up. When we were talking about like, she goes, is it supposed to be hard? And you brought up this is like giving Elwoods and being like, what? Like it's hard. It just shows like he constantly underestimates her, right? And I think it really hit this time because it just reminded me of like when we do get under the mountain, Reese bets on her.
Exactly.
He's the only person
who
bets. Yeah, that she'll come out of that. Whereas like here's Tamlin being like, wow, you snared and I know he's like not saying it that sassily. I think he's more in awe, but it's still a form of underestimating, right? Like he doesn't think she's at all capable of it until she actually does it. Whereas Reese bets on her before she's down in that maze.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's a lot to do with the fact that Reese is someone who he bets on the underdog because he has seen what underdogs can do. Mm-hmm. He has surrounded. I mean, look, he has two women in his inner circle that they're not just his inner circle because they're his friends. They're actually his like next in command.
Yep.
Like there's even
none of the men are.
No, that's even that whole discussion where it actually would go through what it's like Amren, then it's more and then it's the boys.
Yep.
And so he already knows what the underdog can do. Tamlin is not the guy who has been surrounded by that concept. He doesn't believe the little people can win. I think is the type that Tamlin is, and I think
he takes money from the little people.
Yeah, and also I think this also brings up the whole thing of like, so he is so shocked, right, that she accomplishes this.
Yeah,
I think if anything, it shows how I literally wrote, it's like Tamlin is so uneducated about the grotesque. If anything
Yeah.
isn't pretty, it must be evil and dangerous.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like the Suriel, are they actually wildly dangerous?
Yeah.
Like, if you have honest intentions with the Suriel, do they actually pose any threat to you?
Right.
Because Feyre was not using the Suriel to get any kind of power. Feyre was
Mhm.
not using the Suriel to do any kind of like manipulation or anything. She purely wanted information
About her own
about
life.
her own life. And I think, could that be why the Suriel wanted her to go free? Because there was
Yeah.
no trying to like gain power from this. And
No.
so is there a chance where the people think the Suriel is dangerous purely because the only people who have gone for the Suriel have had really bad intentions, or
Yep.
because once they saw the Suriel looked terrifying and it's immediately evil. And like, to me,
Yes.
we see this with Tamlin all the time of
Yeah.
like, of the minute something is gross or looks different or looks dark or whatever, it is immediately evil to him. Because also it's like, why do people think the Suriel is dangerous? What are the
Right.
stories? What are the
Right.
proof? Is it purely because it looks like a walking fucking skeleton? Like,
Yeah.
I have questions.
Well, and if you think I'm so this is such a good point that you're making. And it makes you even wonder, like, he glamours Alice and all of the other servants so that Feyre doesn't freak out, which mind you, he wasn't exactly wrong. Like she
Yeah.
does kind of have a shocking moment, but
Yeah.
like you have to wonder, like, had he not glamored them, had he not assumed she'd freak out,
Yeah.
she might have actually been okay with it, right?
Yeah.
Like he made that assumption for her.
Her.
And it gets even grosser when you think about, well, this is someone who's used to seeing other Fae,
Yeah.
Tamlin. Like he's used to
Exactly.
seeing his own servants, and he knows, like, oh, I should glamour them. Like, what does that say about him?
Exactly.
Right? And I mean, Akatar, out of all of Sarah J. Maas's series, is the most, like we talked about, fairy tale
Yep.
esque
Yep.
series, right?
Yep.
Like it's the first book is literally a recreation of Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
And I think we may have talked about this before in terms of like things like, hair color and whatnot. Like
Mhm.
there's such, if we're talking about like not even old fairy tales, like even the Disney-fied versions of
Yeah.
fairy tales, right? There's such a binary thing with um appearances
Yeah.
and who is good. I mean, speaking of Pride Month, fun fact, I don't know if you know this, Ursula from The Little Mermaid, which Little Mermaid came out in 1989, very specific era in time. Think about it this way, also during the AIDS crisis,
Yeah.
okay? She's the bad guy of
Yeah.
that movie. Ursula, and this is a fact, like there's been behind the scenes stuff made about this. The way Ursula looks is based off of the drag queen Divine, who is very well known for John Waters stuff,
Yeah.
right? Which like I kind of like, I think that's
Oh, it's
great. Like it's
amazing.
so fun.
It's amazing.
But
But
when you think about the intentions behind that,
yeah.
right? Like they and you see this with other Disney villains too.
No, there's actually a whole discussion about how a lot of Disney villains are like very queer coded.
Yep.
And while on one end the queer community, like, we kind of love it, but
We've embraced it.
there's also like, well, but then what are they saying? That like a man who
Mhm.
behaves this way or acts this way, or a woman who acts this way, or yada yada,
Yep.
and what's so funny is it's like that we say queer coded because it's not like there's like, it's not like we like see them with someone of like the same
Right.
sex or something. Like, we really don't know, but there is a vibe.
Yeah.
And so it does beg the question of like, what are we sort of indoctrinating the children into,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, but we're indoctrinating children.
Oh, yeah.
We as in the queers. Right. Like okay.
Well, that I don't
Um,
that shit always fucking kills me because I'm like,
I
I've
know.
been seeing a man kissing a woman in animated films since I was a freaking child.
A baby.
So a baby. So like, how, what?
Yeah.
You've been introducing romance and sexual things, heterosexual,
to children.
to children since they were wee babes.
Yeah.
But the minute it's a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, or whatever,
A
like
trans person or a drag queen, whatever.
yeah, like all of a sudden that's like, that's showing explicit sex. Okay.
Then they're just living their lives. Like I could go
Can't.
on,
Yeah, I
but
know.
I shall
shouldn't have.
not. No, but it does bring up this point though, going back to like what we were talking about of like fairy tales whether we're talking Disney fairy tales or the original Grimm fairy tales and other types of fairy tales, there is this pretty gross binary
Yeah.
of the pretty people
Are
who
the
are
good ones.
typically white, a lot of the times blonde, sometimes not, but a lot of the times they're the good guys. And then, I mean, and this is also a trope, but for kind of good reasons in romance, you have like the dark haired, like
Yeah.
people are like the
The
shadow
bad.
daddies and stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is where we get the whole trope of like the morally gray man and stuff like that. But we, it, all to say is it's changing the conversation, right? And
Yeah.
that's why, I would not say, well, okay. I was gonna say I wouldn't say Tamlin is a morally gray man, but he kind of is.
He kind of is.
More, yeah. He leans more towards in terms of morality, the darker end of the
Yes.
spectrum. Whereas like Rhys, who is considered the morally gray man of the series, when you actually break down what he does, it's all for good reasons.
Yeah.
But he, in a traditional fairy tale, would be the
bad
bad guy, right? Same with the Suriel. The Suriel would be the big monster, right? Like,
right, which is, but like the Suriel ends up not really being that dangerous and actually ends up like kind of helping Feyre. And so like that's why I almost like the more Tamlin was being like, wow, this is so impressive, I like had this moment, I kept having these moments of like, wait, why do we actually think that the Suriel is evil or dangerous? Is it just because you're doing the Tamlin thing where like anything that isn't kind of slightly pretty? Because like how he treats the Wraith,
oh my god, yeah,
has and he like talks about how gross she looks and like all this stuff, and you're just like, bro, what the fuck? Like, yeah. So I just got more and more annoyed with that whole portion because everyone keeps being like, oh my god, like how did you survive? And I'm like, because he told her to go. Like, what?
Yeah. Last thing we'll talk about, we finally get some romance.
Yeah.
Which, I've been bracing myself for this.
God, it hurts, man.
It actually, for me, it wasn't that I thought it was going to hurt. It was more just like,
are you grossed out?
I'm actually not.
Okay.
I'm actually not. And it kind of shocked me.
Mm-hmm.
I've been growing. I've been becoming more forgiving of Tamlin, I think. I think because, again, it's really this redemption arc theory. I'm really digging it. And, rereading this, I'm seeing, I mean, a lot of the bad stuff he hasn't happened yet in the books, where we're at. But, this side of Tamlin, we see there's a good side, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think I kind of just pity the guy, which we've talked about, but I didn't get butterflies, I'll tell you that. But I was kind of like, oh, like it definitely reminded me of like, again, I keep referring to it as like high school, like that high school crush that you have, but you're like, as an adult, you look back on it and you're like, oh, we would have never worked out. And thank God nothing happened there, right?
Totally.
It's that. And it's like, it's like one of those things that's like, maybe it's fun to like think back on because it never did. But like, if you think about it too much and you're like, realistically, where would this have gone? Where would Tamlin and Feyre have gone if they'd actually gotten married? You're like, oh no. No. That's bad. That's bad.
Yeah. There's a few things that happen at the end of this chapter for me that are like kind of a little painful because like, this chapter we learn, right, that he has glamored Feyre's family to believe she's like okay, and that lives with an aunt, and that there is a threat. Like he took care of everything. And what's so wild to me, this is really like the brilliance of Mother Mass, in that on your first time reading this, you're so caught up in the fairy tale of it all that you're like, who gives a fuck that he like violated their brains? Like, yes, he solved it all. Like, her family is safe. They know there's a threat, but also they're not going to somehow get themselves killed by trying to save her. Like, he fixed it all. It's all in a perfect bow. This is freaking awesome. Right. And then the second time you read this, you're like, what the fuck, bro? Like, you violated their brains. Like,
especially when Nesta
that it doesn't work on Nesta.
Yeah.
And so it's even crueler because then Nesta's stuck in this world with these two people who believe this one thing, but she knows the truth, which is like super fucked up.
Yep.
But it's just like, to me, this is when we're really starting to get into the like crazy Fight Club switch situation that she did in this book. I mean, I think there's a combination of things there. There's like the power of just like the fairy tale, fantasy, romantasy genre in general that like people kind of
they excuse certain things because there's a plot point they know they're trying to get to. Like, we all know we're trying to get to the moment of them falling in love. We all know we're trying to get there. So we're kind of like, okay, cool. So these things have been dealt with. We don't have to worry about this, la, 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 la. But she uses that. Like, she uses
Yeah.
the fact that she knows we're all going to fall into that. And she relies on that to let it get away. But then later, when you think about Tamlin and you go backwards, you're like, actually, he's kind of done some like pretty weird things from the beginning. Like, yeah, it's a hardcore Fight Club thing and it's really fucking insane. But like, yeah, honestly, they're like, he's so happy to do something for her at the end. His like big broad smile and like,
that is pretty cute.
It's so cute and it hurts so much. Like, I literally wrote like, their cute crush moments hurt now. Oh, Tam, you have no idea how much you're going to ruin this.
Yeah. And I feel like we've all known people like this, right? Whether romantic or otherwise. Like, we've all known people who like, I think that's where it gets hard for me is like, there's only so much excusing.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying like you are, but like with him, it's like, I'm sorry that you have had shit happen in your life that sucks and, inform what you're doing now. But like, and again, I will always say, like, Rhys has had just as bad, if not worse, shit happen to him. Yeah. And he never for a second comes anywhere close to this.
No.
Never.
You're totally right.
And it's the power of choice,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's a lot of the discussions I have, I feel like, with like my sisters all the time, which are just like, what makes you as a human is how, and I think we even talked about it in the last episode of just like, it's your successes and your failures, and it's how you deal with them both. That I think are what make you who you are.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tam.
oh
my God. We did it again.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, we can't do better than that.
I was gonna say, I feel like that is the cue to wrap up.
Absolutely.
So next week, we're going to be covering chapters 17 through 18. If you listen to the last episode, the spoiler-free episode, you'll have heard this, but just a heads up to everyone, Corryn has a film she's working on in July. So we're getting all those episodes done. So we might cut back on how many chapters we do every week. It's probably going to be 1 to 2 for a little bit, if not the rest. Because honestly, I could see it being a thing where like, we're really like, we're finally now in a place in this book where like shit is happening.
Yeah.
And it's only going to continue to, there's going to be way more shit going on as we go along.
Yeah.
So we might stick to this. We're going to see. If you would like, we would love it if you rated, reviewed, and subscribed to us. That really helps us get the podcast out to other people who are ACOTAR fans or who are just, learning about ACOTAR. If you have any friends who are just getting into ACOTAR, send them our way. We'd love for them to read along with us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can find us on social media at TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Cauldron Save Us Pod. And then if you want to pop into our email to say hi or give any suggestions or anything like that, you can email us at cauldronsaveus@gmail.com. And that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks for joining us again, friends.
Thank you for joining us and our chaotic queen, the Suriel, aka me, I guess.
Yeah, aka Ariel, I guess. And as always, you're welcome.
And we're sorry. Bye, guys.
Bye.